or whatever. But ultimately, at the end of the day, for me, I would have just looked at it as, oh, I'm there to help people either buy, sell, and that's it. Even 5 years ago when I came to Everest, if you would have asked me, I probably would have said that same thing. And here's the interesting thing for me. So I have been teaching now here at Everest for 5 years. And during that 5 years that I'm teaching here, some of the things that I have said along the way as I have taught the classes and things is one of the things that I have taught and said. In fact, every time I have taught this class for the last 5 years, which is typically probably at least 4 times a year that I'm teaching this class, I stand up and say this: your job is to be a leader. And the number one skill of a leader is communication. And if you will keep that in mind, that is what it is. But so I've done that for 5 years now. I've been standing up and teaching the classes and saying that. And I will tell you, actually, I have a new understanding of what that means over the last few months. Now, and I've shared this story with you guys, I think, recently, but I'm going to share it just briefly again, real quick, just so that in case some have not heard it. But what happened is in May, we were doing a virtual call around, and I had a bunch of agents that were supposed to be on the phone making phone calls, and we were all on a Zoom call this. And the idea was then that we would have a bunch of phones ringing, and then as soon as somebody picked up, all the rest of us would hang up a call and sit and listen. Well, everybody put their Zoom on mute, and they were making calls, so nobody could hear anybody's calls going on. And I was like, well, this defeats the whole purpose of us doing this if you guys are not going to unmute. But I could not get people to unmute their phone. So I finally said, all right, well, since you guys aren't making calls, or at least not willing to let us listen to you make calls, then I'm going to. And so what happened is I jumped on and I made a phone call to a lead. And as I called, the person answered the phone and she said, yeah, we've thought about buying a home, but we're not sure, and blah, 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 all the stuff that you always hear. Well, I then was able to get her to be willing to talk to the lender. She then talked to the lender. We then met. I helped them through the process of then they bought a house. Well, it was not long after that I was thinking about this, about our job being to be a leader. And as I was thinking about our job is really leadership, and the way that we do it is through our communication, it kind of clicked to me at a different level than it ever had before, in terms of I realized, and I truly believe what I'm about to say right now, is I truly believe that had I not made that phone call on that day to that particular person, I think they would still be renting, because they were living and renting a home from her dad. Her name was Katie. They were renting a home from Katie's dad. And so there was no, like, it wasn't like, oh, our lease is up, we got to go find somewhere. They didn't really have one. And her dad had said, you guys can go anytime you want. Well, when I got on the phone with them, they were very, we're not so sure. And as I look back on it now, I can see that really my job was to be a leader and to lead them. So when we talk about that, I don't want you to think of it in terms of like it's this bad thing. Like sometimes people will think of salespeople as being manipulators, as that we're there to manipulate people. And that's not it at all. At the end of the day, what they wanted was to buy a new house, and they're grateful that they did. But I realized that my leadership of them, of being able to say to them, hey, let's just do this. Let's take this step. And asking them to just take one step, which the first one that I couldn't get them to meet with me. So I just said, well, let's just do this then. Let's have you talk to the lender. Well, the lender then called. She didn't talk to him. They hadn't called him back. He called me and said she didn't call. So I then called back her. She answered the phone and she said, yes, I'm going to. I just haven't had a chance, which again, you would assume if they're saying, oh yeah, I just haven't had a chance, they're not that committed or excited about doing it. Well, what ended up happening then is that she did finally respond to the lender. They got approved, and then it just kind of was, then they were willing to meet with me. Then we went out and looked at a house. And so I just would say to you, just keep in mind, when you hear us talking about your job is to be a leader, and the number one skill that a leader has is communication. Well, if that is the case, then your job as a leader is to lead people through a process. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So the idea of today's class is about presentations, but specifically we're going to talk about the listing presentation. So first thing that I'm going to do, so I'm going to grab my iPad because I think how I've got this worked out, and I think this is going to work the way I want it to, is I'm going to have to do a screen share with you guys from my iPad here. So let me get that set up. And then I'm going to just use the whiteboard on here. All right. Now, unfortunately, you guys have seen how bad my handwriting is already anyways, but it's probably going to be even worse on my iPad, but bear with me. And if you can't understand what I'm typing or writing or something, then just, ask me the question, throw it in the chat box, or please unmute yourself and just, hey, tell me, hey, I can't understand what that says. But here's the first step. So in terms of a listing presentation, is there are two parts to a listing presentation. So let me just write this up here. And the first part is what we would call over here, choose me. The second part over here is what's going to be price. All right. So yeah, sorry, that I'm looking on my screen. That's poor. So, but sorry, that's my handwriting. That's what you get. I'm better at speaking than writing, let's hope anyway. All right, so here's the thing. So there are two parts to a listing presentation. The first part is what we would say as choose me. And so what we mean by that is before you are going to talk about the price with them, you've got to get them to choose you. So the number one thing that's going to happen on any presentation, so let me just pause for a minute, because yes, we're talking about listing presentation, but if you're meeting with a buyer as well, the number one thing that has to take place, the first thing you've got to have happen is for them to choose you. Now, let me ask you a question, and I want somebody to unmute and talk with me about it. So let's say that you're either on the phone let's start with it on the phone. You're on the phone prospecting and you make a phone call and you get somebody that says, yes, I'd like you to come out and list my home. So you've got somebody who wants you to come out and talk to them about selling their home and that they're going to list. They then say to you, well, so how much is your commission going to be? Now, based on what I said right here, the number one thing that has to happen is you've got to get them to choose you before you talk price. Now, when I say before you talk price, what I'm referring to on that is either the price of their house or the commission you're going to charge. Do not talk about the commission you charge or the price you're going to put on their home until you know they have chosen you. So here's the question for you. How are you going to respond? And I would love for someone to, like I say, unmute yourself and share with me. How are you going to respond when somebody says to you, okay, great, you can come list my house, but I just have a question. How much is your commission going to be? And don't all unmute at once.
I would just say something like, well, we can talk about that after we've decided if I want to show you what I'm going to be able to do for you first and all the products I'm going to be able to offer you. And once you decide if I'm the one for you, then we can move into price. But let's see first what products and what services I have to offer you and if they feel right for you.
Good job. That's great. That's perfect. That's exactly how we want to do it. So essentially, there's a number of different ways you could go about it, but I love that one. Is yeah, hey, first let's wait until I get out there and then let's talk through it, because I need to first understand what it is you want, and then from there we can talk about it. I think that's great. The other one that I like to use is I use something very similar in just saying, hey, I have a range that we can charge, meaning it could be as low as 0%, but it could be as high as 10% commission. It really just depends upon what you're wanting to accomplish. And so what we need to do is sit down and talk about what's important to you, and then we'll put together a plan and a strategy that will work for both of us on the commission. And that usually will satisfy them, because they will say, okay. So now let me give you one other one that you can use. Another one that agents use quite often is that they will say to the person, hey, that will be the first thing that we will talk about when I get out to your house. So the idea being of just saying, hey, we are not going to talk about the price until we have gotten them to choose us first. Because, and here's what, let me ask the question of why. Why do we not want to talk about price until they've chosen us?
A lot of people try to get hung up on price, whether they intend to or not. It's something that turns into a roadblock for them if they haven't 100% decided that they are working with you.
Perfect. That's exactly right, Jake. Perfect. So good. Yeah. So until they have decided, it could become a roadblock. The other thing that I would say is there are tons of discount brokers out there. Now, in fact, let me kind of give you a quick story real quick, another one about me and my career. So many years ago, probably 20 years ago now, 20 years ago, I was at a company and I had decided I wanted to go to what you would consider to be a discount broker today. And the idea of why I decided to do that was the company I was with, I was charging 6% commissions all the time. And because that was at our company, we were like, you don't charge less than 6 without permission from a broker, which to some extent I still feel like we should be doing as well. Well, I decided I wanted to go to this other company because they didn't care what commissions I charged. And so I went over to this other company thinking, well, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to take a bunch of listings. And here was my thought, guys, was I just thought I'm going to go and to this other company, I'm going to call for sale by owners and I'm going to go list them at 4%. I'll keep one, I'll offer 3% to whoever brings in the buyer. And I just thought I'll just make a killing off of doing that. Well, I went and started doing that, and I found out really quickly that the people who you end up working with that expect you to only charge them a small commission like that are also the people who expect you to bend over backwards. They're the ones who expect you to give them even more commission at closing. I was shocked at how many times at closing I'm making 1%, and somebody at closing was saying, hey, you should give us a rebate of $500 or something, and this and that. Now, here's the other thing I found, and this is where the point of this story is the other thing that I found is even though I was calling for sale by owners and saying I would do it for 1%, there was somebody else always out there calling who would do it for cheaper. There were people who were calling and saying, I will do it for $400. I'll do it for $295. Like there were people that were willing to take a listing for a very, very low price. Now, what I didn't understand at the time that I do now is what I mentioned to you is the people who you work with who want that type of it and expect that type of a cut in the commission are also the ones that after the transaction's over, you're like, even if I did it for 7%, it wouldn't have been worth it, is what I found. Now, here's the other side of it is that there is always somebody who's going to be willing to do it for then they see no value in you. They don't appreciate anything that you are doing for them. And if that's the case, see, they don't see, as far as they're concerned, that's all that matters. But if we can get them to choose me first, once they have chosen me, now we can then worry about price. See, until they are okay with me being the agent and I can see that, price doesn't really matter. Because at the end of the day, let's say that what ends up happening is that you go meet with them and they don't like you, they don't trust you. All of a sudden, does it really even matter what the commission is? It doesn't. Because the commission doesn't matter until they have chosen you first. All right, so I beat that up way longer than I probably needed to. So there's 6 things that have to happen in order for them to be willing to choose you. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to run you through and talk about these 6 things that have to happen in order for them to choose you. Then from there, we're going to jump in and we're going to do the listing presentation. So these 6 things that I'm talking about apply across the board to buyer or seller. And then we'll jump into just the listing presentation once we are done with that. So first thing that has to happen on any appointment that you're going to go on, the first thing that has to happen is there has got to be some rapport built. So you've got to build some rapport with them, or another way you could say it if you wanted to write it down is to say a connection. There's got to be a connection or a rapport that is built. Now, here's the thing I would tell you. Of all the rest of the things we're going to talk about in terms of this presentations, if you're going to make a mistake on one of them, make the mistake on this one. And what I mean by that is error on the side of overdoing the connection. If you're going to err on either not having a connection or way overdoing the connection or the rapport, do that. Now, let me speak to that though for a minute, because sometimes there's a misunderstanding of when we talk about rapport or a connection with people. We a lot of times think about connection or rapport as being, oh, you have a cat? I love cats. Cats are so great, which I don't, by the way. But we tend to do that type of a thing of trying to build a connection of, oh, you got a cat. I have a cat. I love cats. Or you have a dog. I have a dog. And my dog's this or my dog's that. That's not what I mean by error on the side of rapport or connection. What I mean by error on the side of rapport or connection is more about this. The number one human need that we all have is acceptance. We want to be accepted and we want to be right. In fact, I read an article the one day that talked about, that said we all of us assume that eventually everyone will figure out our beliefs are correct in every aspect. Politics, religion, doesn't matter. That we all assume, everyone's going to assume that we were correct. So the part of what I say when I'm talking about building a rapport and connection is making sure that you actually are taking the time to do that. And the way that you're going to do that is through asking a lot of questions. So you want to ask a lot of questions that are about them and keep the conversation being about them, not you. So meaning not going back to, oh, you have a cat? I have a cat. That's so exciting that we both have a cat and blah, blah, blah. That's not what I mean. But asking a ton of questions that allow them to talk and for you to be then repeating and affirming back to them and showing empathy with them. See if they're frustrated that they have to move for whatever reason, or they're excited that they have to move. Show empathy and be either excited for them or be disappointed for them if that's what it is. But we got to build this connection with them. And I'll come back to that in a little bit as we go through the listing presentation. All right, number 2. The second thing that has to happen is they have to feel safe. They need to feel safe in what they are meeting with you. Now, as you build that connection and the rapport is what is going to allow them to then feel safe. Now, number 3 then that has to happen in order for them to choose you is they need to then be able to trust you. So the first thing is building the rapport and connection, which will allow them to then feel safe. Once they feel safe, they can now trust you. And once they trust you, and the reason that they're going to do that is because of you asking the questions and being concerned about them, and they're going to pick up on that. Once they feel that safety, and then they trust you, they will allow you to lead them. See, your job is to be a leader, and part of what's going to have to happen in order for you to lead them is they've got to feel safe and they've got to trust you to lead them through the process. And then that goes next to number 4. The number 4 thing that has to happen is we have to create value. We have to create value. Now, I will show you in the listing presentation how this applies and how we're going to create value, but we have to create some value for them. Now, this is tied to what we talked about earlier. Price does not matter until they have chosen you. Well, once they have chosen you and they want you to do it, they're going to see the value in you. And because they see the value, they will hopefully now be willing to pay the price. See, I always like to use the example of this. We are all not driving around in a Yugo. Now, most of you guys are probably too young to even know what a Yugo is. But I choose that as the vehicle because I don't want to offend anybody by throwing out any other vehicle name that somebody's going to be like, hey, I drive one of those. But a Yugo was a car that was built, probably early 80s. It basically had a lawnmower engine in there. And in fact, actually, I'll use this car. My wife and I, when we first got married, she had a Geo Metro. It was a 3-cylinder car. We drove to California and back. We got 52 miles to the gallon in the car, which was awesome, but it was not the best vehicle. Now, but let me ask you this question. It got us to California and back. And not only did it get us to California and back, it did it at 52 miles to the gallon. My guess is unless any of you are driving an electric car, you're not getting 52 miles to the gallon. So why are all of us not driving Geo Metros, getting 52 miles to the gallon in our cars? Why do some of us, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Julie, go ahead.
I had a Geo Metro and it blew up.
You did have one.
Yeah, I did.
Awesome. So why are we not all driving those around? Because, I mean, great gas mileage, got us from point to point.
Well, they don't hold up well. They're kind of cheap, and maybe it's a status symbol too. But yeah, the engine blew on mine, so that's why I don't have it.
Okay, good. So, but for everybody else, why would somebody be willing to go pay $100,000 for a car? Because at the end of the day, doesn't that car just get you from point A to point B? And most of those $100,000 cars are not going to get 52 miles to the gallon. So the Geo Metro really probably was better. So why do we not all drive them? David's saying status. Good. That's going to be exactly part of it for sure.
Reliability.
Okay, good. Reliability. Why else?
Comfort.
Comfort. Good. Yeah. So here's the thing. Here's what I want you guys to see from this is notice at the end of the day, every person out there is willing to pay the price if they see the value. See, if we didn't see the value in driving a Lexus or a Mercedes or a Tesla or whatever car, a Bentley, a Rolls Royce, I mean, stop and think about that. People are paying $500,000-$600,000 for a Rolls Royce. Why? The Geo Metro does the exact same job. Well, the reason, and Carla says personal preference, that's good. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's because they see the value in it. We like the status, we like the comfort, we like the options, we like all those things. But at the end of the day, what I want you guys to see and just to recognize is if we see value, we will pay the price. So the reason why number 4 on here is that we have to create some value is because if they see value, they will pay the price. But they have to understand the value. All right, next, number 5 is separate yourself. You have to separate yourself. In order for them to choose you, you've got to separate yourself. Now, part of what is going to create the value is you separating yourself. As you separate yourself from the competition, and I'll show you how we're going to do that, that creates the value for the consumer as well. And then number 6 on this is we have to close. Now, you'll see what that looks like as we go through the listing presentation. But make sure you've got this. What I'm not sure of, guys, is I'm going to start a new page on this, and I don't know if it'll let me go back to it or not. So make sure you have this written down because I'll refer back to it if I can't get back to it on this whiteboard as I go through it. So, but you've got to close, and I'll show you what that looks like. So just keep in mind, do not talk price. If you get out to their house and you start to talk to them and they just start to hammer you on, well, what's the price going to be for you? You're going to charge me on the commission. You cannot answer the question of what the price is going to be until you know if they've chosen you. So you're going to have to say to them, hey, I promise you we're going to talk about the price and we're going to come to something that will work for both of us. But before we do that, I need to ask you some questions and make sure that I fully understand what it is you are wanting to accomplish, and then we'll talk price. All right. Is there a question on or no? Guess not. Okay. All right. So the next thing with this. So now let's jump into the listing presentation. So I'm hopeful that I can go back and forth on the pages here. So we will see here in just a second if that will work or not here. I think I can. All right, here we go. So we're going to go through the listing presentation. So the first thing that has to happen on a listing presentation is an acronym that we call TAP or TAP. Now, have any of you heard this before? Do you know what TAP stands for? This is where I'm going to give you the chance to show off that you know what it means if you do.
Thank, acknowledge, promise.
Good job, David. That's right. So the TAP is going to be thank, acknowledge, and promise. And you won't hurt my feelings if you say, I can't read that word. What does it say? So thank, acknowledge, and promise. So the first thing that you want to do, so as you go on a listing presentation, or again, on this one, just any presentation, a buyer comes to the office, you meet them at their house, it doesn't matter, but any presentation that you go on, the first thing you're going to want to do is you want to thank, acknowledge, and promise. So here's what that would look like. So if I was meeting with David, since he brought it up, I'm going to say, hey, David, thank you for inviting me to come over and talk to you about the sale of your home. Man, I noticed when I pulled up to your house how awesome the curb appeal is. Those flowers that you guys have put out there, those are just beautiful. Was that you or the wife that did that? And then he's going to say him or the wife or whatever. But no, so notice I'm acknowledging how well they've taken care of the house. And then I'm going to say, hey, I promise you that we're going to have some good information that I'm going to share with you before we're done today. So I want to thank them for letting me come out. I want to acknowledge something about the house if since we're talking about a listing. If I can, I want to acknowledge something about the house, the flowers, the yard, the whatever. Now, if there's nothing, like you get out there and the house is a piece of junk, if there is nothing to acknowledge them with, then what you would want to do is just acknowledge their time. So I would just say, hey, David, thanks for having me come over. And hey, I just appreciate you being willing to carve some time out of your day to meet with me. Like if there's nothing else to tell them that's good, at least acknowledge their time. And then just promise that, hey, I'm going to give you some really good information at the end. Okay, so now that I've done that, I've done the thank, acknowledge, and promise. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to just draw a line here. That line is going to represent, and I'm just going to write here, look at house, okay? So I'm going to go look at the house. Now, remember that I told you, and in fact, let me see if I can do this here. Yes, good. So it looks like it might work. So remember I told you the first thing that's got to happen is we've got to build some rapport and have a connection with the people. Well, what I'm going to do then is now I'm going to go and look at the house, okay? So I'm going to look at the house. Now, there's two ways that you can go about doing this in terms of looking at the house. And depending on which agents you talk to, you're going to get differing opinions. There's not a right or a wrong answer. I will tell you, you can do either of these options and it will be fine. And then I'll tell you how I decide what I'm going to do. But for me, you can either have them show you through the house or you go look at it on your own. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to both of those. The advantage to you going and looking at it by yourself without them walking through the property with you, the advantage of that is what is going to happen is it is going to allow you to get through the house very quickly. You can get through it very fast on your own without them being with you. Now, the way that I'm going to do that, if I want to look at it by myself, because a lot of times they want to show you through the home, I will say to them, I want to go and explore your home through the eyes of a buyer. So I want to go through and discover it the way that a buyer is going to discover it. So I would like to go look at the home by myself, and here's some paperwork that you can take a look at, or you could just say, I'll just meet you in the kitchen or whatever. But if I'm wanting to go by myself, the advantage of that again being you could do it quickly. The disadvantage of doing it that way is it does not allow for you to take some time to help build that connection or the rapport that we talked about there. So if I feel like I need the connection, then I am going to have them show me through the house. So that's part of how I'm going to decide, do I have them show me through the house or do I go on my own? If I feel like on the phone or that I know the person and I've got a good rapport and connection, I'm just going to go look at it on my own. If I feel like, no, I could use the opportunity to build some rapport and get some connection going with the people, then I'm going to ask them, hey, would you mind showing me through the home? And in fact, I usually just say, will you give me the grand tour? Show me all the wonderful things you've done with this house. And then it allows me to do more of that acknowledge as they walk through the property, which again, if you remember, the number one human need that people have is acceptance. So if they're walking you through and they're showing you, oh, you know, here's my drop down screen or whatever for the theater system, you can be like, oh, wow, that's great. That's awesome. You know, whatever you can come up with as you're going to talk to them about those things. So you can use that as an opportunity. Now, the downside to having them show you through the house is it is going to take a lot longer to get through the house, like probably 4 or 5, 10 times longer to get through the house than if you go by yourself, because they're going to want to point out every little thing. Now, again, like I said, you may want to do that. And if you do, great, have them show you through the house. Part of how I decide as well is going to be based upon, do I feel like I need the connection and do I have the time? If I have another back-to-back appointment that I need to get to, then I'm probably just going to say, hey, let me walk through the home and discover it through the eyes of the buyer. But I will tell you, for me personally, I generally, most of the time, if I look back over all the listings I've done, generally I have them show me through the property. So you decide how you want to do it, that way or other, but you're going to have them go, you're going to go look at the home, and you're either going to have them show you or do it on your own. All right, next, number 2. So we've now gone through, we've looked at the home. The next thing that I'm going to talk about here with you guys is what I call the game plan. So I'm going to write it down here, game plan, or sometimes I will even call it a road map. So it's a game plan or a road map. Now, what that's going to look like is this. We all, as human beings, we all want to know where we're going. So meaning, typically, if we were in the same room and I was teaching this class to you, I will say something like this. Sometimes I'll start the class with like this, is at the very start of the class, before we had done anything today, I would have said to you guys, okay guys, hey, partway through the class, somebody's going to come in and tell me that the bus is here. As soon as that happens, we're all going to go out and get on the bus. Well, when I'm sitting there in the room with you, and I said that at the start of the class, so if before the class had even started and everyone was in the room and I said that to you guys, what's the first thing you guys would have asked me if I did that? So imagine, let's pretend we're all in a room together right now at the office, and I say to you guys, hey guys, at some point somebody's going to come and tell me the bus is here. Once I get that, we're all going to go get on the bus. What's the question you're going to ask me?
Where are we going?
Yeah, see, look at that. I got 3 people all the time said, where are we going? See, we notice
Where are we going?
we all want to know where we're going. Yeah. Every one of us wants to know where are we going. So the idea of this game plan or roadmap is to let them know where we are going. Okay, so keep in mind this part of it as I'm explaining it. If you get lost on this, stop and ask me, because I'm going to do my best to explain it to you of how this process works. But inevitably, it seems like there's always, I don't do a very good job, I guess, of explaining it, because there's usually somebody that's like, no, wait a minute, when are we going to do that? And if you have that question, make sure you ask it, because I want to make sure you're clear on how this works. Okay, so let me just make sure you guys understand. So I showed up to David's house. I said, thank you for letting me come out. The curb appeal is awesome. The flowers, who did that? Was it you or the wife? He tells me it was him. I'm like, wow, you've got a great green thumb. That's awesome. Hey, I promise I'm going to give you some really good information. Before we get started, though, I want to discover your home through the eyes of the buyer. So let me take a quick look at the home, and then let's meet in the kitchen, and I will we'll go through and talk about and answer any questions you have. So I go through and I look at the house. We're now in the kitchen, and I'm going to say to David, okay, David, as we get started, I just want to give you an overview of what we're going to talk about. Now, remember I said to you guys, everybody wants to know where we're going. That's why I'm saying to him, I'm going to give you an overview of what we're going to talk about. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today is your needs, your wants, and ultimately your expectations. So that, if you guys can't read it, that says needs, wants, and expectations. So that's where I'm going to start, is I'm going to say, okay, David, the first thing we're going to talk about is I want to talk to you about your needs, your wants, and ultimately your expectations that you would have of me as an agent. And then I'll share with you what my expectations of you as a seller would be as well. After we have done that, we're going to then talk about, and here's, I'm going to write it down for you guys. Basically, it's probably a little different than how I'm going to say it, but I'm going to write it down here as what I do, okay? You could think of it as, I'm going to use the word market. I'm writing it down in parentheses here, market, but don't think of it as marketing. like, meaning that's kind of what it is, but it's really not that. It's more what I do to get a home sold. Okay, now I'll say more about this as we actually get into it, but keep in mind right now, all I'm talking to them about is I'm giving them the here's what we're going to do. So I'm not actually doing it yet. I'm just telling them what we're going to do. So the first thing we're going to talk about, David, is your needs, wants, and expectations. And then I'll share with you what I would expect from you. Then number two, what we're going to talk about is what do I do to get a home sold? What makes me different? The other thing I guess we could write on here is I'm going to put in here, separate myself. Now I'm saying that more for you than I am for them, but I am going to tell them, I'm going to show you why I'm different. What makes me different than every other agent out there? So the first thing we're going to talk about your needs, wants, and expectations. The second thing we're going to talk about is what do I do to get a home sold? What makes me different than every other agent out there? Now remember, from this back here, the reason I'm doing that is because I need to be able to create some value and I need to be able to separate myself. And that's where that's going to take place, is by doing that. And then number three that we are going to talk about is the market. Okay. Now, so remember I have up here what I do, or the marketing. I wrote market up above. I should have written marketing, sorry. But number three that we're going to talk about with them is the market. Now, in terms of the market, what we're going to do is and I'll show you this when we get to it, but when we go through and we talk to them about the market, is I'm going to explain to them what's going on in the market today. Now, right now, I'm not. In this piece of it, remember, we're only on this roadmap section. So I'm going to just talk to them about, hey, then we're going to talk about the market and how that affects the price of your home. And then number four, I'm going to write it here for you guys as close. Now, I'll tell you what that looks like in just a second here. All right. Now, let me show you what this looks like. So first, I'm going to do the thank, acknowledge, promise, which you've heard me do a few times now. So I'm thanking David, acknowledging him, promising him. I'm going to go take a quick look at your home. Then I'm going to come back and say, let me give you an overview of what we're going to talk about. First, we're going to talk about what your needs and wants are, and ultimately what your expectations would be of me. I'll share with you what I would expect from you as a seller. Then we're going to talk about what do I do to get a home sold? What makes me different than every other agent out there? After we've covered that, David, then what I'm going to do is we're going to talk about what's going on in the market today. We're going to talk about how the market is reacting right now and how that is going to affect the price of your home. And then ultimately at the end, if you're comfortable and confident in everything that we've talked about, David, I'm going to ask you to sign some paperwork. Okay? And then he's going to say, okay. And then from there, we can now start into it. So now before we go on to step three, I just want to make sure you guys understand. And in fact, I'm going to write it this way on my notes here. Up here in number one, needs, wants, and expectations, I'm going to write it here as questions, because you're going to ask them a lot of questions. Okay. And we'll talk about that next. So this number two piece is I'm not actually right now talking to them about needs, wants, and expectations, what I do, market. I'm just giving them an overview. Now, I probably have beaten that way more than it needs to, but I just wanted to make sure you guys understood it. All right. Next, then. So then number three. The third thing that I'm now going to do is I'm going to write it here as questions. But then I'm going to put in parentheses here, needs, wants, and expectations. All right. So now we're actually going to do that. So back here on this one, where I had number one is needs, wants, and expectations, that is just what we were telling them we were going to do. Now right here in number three is where we're actually going to do it. So let me show you what that looks like. For those of you that have been through my needs analysis class, this section here where we do this questions is where we're now going to do the needs analysis. And if you haven't been through that class, then as you come through it, I'll explain this in more detail then. But for now, just know right here is where I'm going to ask questions. And those questions need to be all based around their needs, their wants, and their expectations that they're going to have of you. So typically what you're going to want to start off with is, for me, is I like to just ask them this question right off the bat of, tell me about your past experience with either buying or selling real estate. So I'm going to write some things below this of how you want to ask it. I'm not necessarily going to write the questions right here. I'll give you a bunch, but you want to start with saying things like, tell me about, or share with me, or describe for me. You want to say things like that to them, or help me understand is another one you might want to do, is help me understand. So I'm going to ask questions of them, and every one of those questions I want to start with either tell me about, share with me, describe for me, or help me understand. So I'm going to start by saying, hey, share with me about your past experience working with real estate agents to either buy or sell a home. And then they're going to tell me. And then I'll say, well, so tell me about what you liked that they did or what you didn't like that they did. See, ultimately, it's hard for me to tell you 100%, here's the questions you need to ask them, because if you're doing it right, you're going to build based upon what they say. So I'm going to be asking them, hey, so tell me about your past experience in either buying or selling real estate. And then they're going to start to talk to me and tell me about that. Now, as they do that, I'm going to go, interesting. All right. Yeah. Tell me more. Oh, well, that's cool. That, or, whatever. Hey, so what did you like that they did? What do you think they should have done? Where do you feel like they could have done better? So I'm going to ask deeper level questions than just, meaning a lot of times an agent will do it this way. Hey, so tell me about your past experience with buying or selling. And the person says, well, we bought the home and it's been 20 years and I don't really remember. I mean, the agent was good, but I guess that's it. And then we would just go, okay, and go to the next question. So you're going to want to ask some follow-up questions like, well, what did the agent do that you liked? Was there anything you wish that they would have done that they didn't do? So ask some additional questions of that. Now, again, let me just try to tie this together for you back to here. Remember, we've got to get them to have this connection or this rapport with us. And so the reason that I'm asking all of these questions that way is to create that connection and the rapport with them. Because if I can have that connection and the rapport with them, then what it's going to do is it's going to get them onto that process of them choosing me to be the agent. So I'm going to ask them to tell me about their past experience. The other thing that I'm going to ask them about is I like to ask them, hey, share with me what's important, what is going to be the most important thing to you about getting this home sold. And then they're going to start to share with me, and then I can ask some follow-up questions to that as well. The other one that I'm going to ask, tell me what's important about price or the pricing in terms of getting your home sold, or how, let me rephrase that. Share with me how price would affect your decision. So share with me how price is going to affect your decision. That's another question that I like to ask them is, hey, how is price going to affect your decision? Because there may be some people that just say, hey, we're planning on building this new house and we've got to be able to net $200,000 from this home. If we don't, we're not going to be able to buy that house. And so that's how it's going to affect it. I mean, whatever it is. The other one that I'm going to ask them on this is, hey, share with me how the timing of this, the time is going to affect your decision, meaning how quickly do they need to sell, or is there a time frame that they have to get it done in? Share with me what's the most important thing about getting the home sold. And then finally, the other area that I'm going to ask a question on under this questions and section is going to be, what is your biggest concern? Tell me about your biggest concern, or you might say fear. Tell me about your biggest fear you have in getting this home sold. Now, that question is probably going to be the question that is going to get you the listing. So I want to make sure that that you got that one down. You're going to ask them to either share with you what their biggest concern or the biggest fear is. What keeps them up at night about getting this home sold? What is it that's going to have them be the most nervous or concerned about it? And I'm telling you, once you get that answer is where typically is going to be how you're going to be able to then have that connection with them and be able to get the listing as a result of that question. Now, let me share with you quickly an example of that. We had an agent who got an opportunity to go out in California on a multi-million-dollar listing. The agent went out there and did exactly what we're talking about. Asked the lady, hey, share with me what's important to this about this, and tell me what this, and what's your biggest, see, when he said, what is your biggest concern or your fear, what keeps you up at night? This lady said, well, I have met with a number of people, and you notice the carpet that I have in the living room is white. Well, that was a birthday present from my husband, and it means a lot to me, and it was handmade in Peru or something, I don't remember, but some crazy thing where they had spent tons and tons of money on this carpet. And she said, all I can picture is people walking through my house, destroying the carpet. Well, because of that, the agent was able to say, well, then let's do this to make sure we protect your carpet. And that's how he got the listing. So what he said is, which this is kind of somewhat, or at least was pretty common back in March and April and May for our market, but was people would go and get booties and put them for people to walk through the house with. Well, that's what this guy did for her. Is he said, I'm going to go buy a box of booties at the medical supply store, and we're going to just have everybody who comes through your home put on these booties so that it protects your carpet. He got the listing over a $5 box of booties on a multi-million-dollar property. See, that's the key on this, is keep in mind, you need to be asking these questions designed around you being able to build the rapport that will allow them to feel safe and trust you. And that's exactly what happened with this guy on this. So any questions on this questions section from you guys? I really hate doing this over Zoom because you guys are way less interactive than if we were in person, but any questions?
It all makes
right,
sense.
I see. Okay, cool, thank you. I'm just that good, huh? I'll start to leave stuff out then so that you, if you don't have any questions, I'll say you guys are watching TV, not watching me or something. All right, then number 4. So the questions piece. So that, now here's the thing. Let me ask you guys this. So this one, I know you can answer the question. So if you had to take a test, if today you guys were going to have to take a test, and I said to you, you can do this test by open book or a closed book test, which one would you guys choose to do?
Definitely open book. Always open book.
Okay, good. I got Aaron saying open book.
Test on this listing presentation?
Anything, I don't care, whatever. Yeah, maybe let's say that. At the end of this class, I'm going to say to you guys, I'm going to give you a test on this. Do you want to do it as an open book, or do you want to be able to see my notes or not?
Yes.
Okay, good. There's usually always some overachiever in the class. Oh, I see one. Yep, David. He's the one that always says, yeah, I want a closed book test. I appreciate it. That's good. So here's the thing. And I get it, because probably David's saying he wants it closed because then you know if you learned the material or not, is probably the thinking, right? So I get that. But in terms of you going on a listing presentation, you want to do it as an open book test, and here's why. You're going to get the listing. If you do it as a closed book on a listing presentation, so I get it of wanting to understand the information, but in terms of a listing presentation, if you want to make sure you're going to get the listing, you want it to be an open book test. Well, here's how you get it to be an open book test. You ask all of these type of questions of them, and they'll give you all the answers to the test. Meaning, they have somehow inside of them a way they're going to decide who they're going to list their home with. And if you'll ask the right questions, they'll give you the answers to the test, of tell you what they're looking for in an agent and what their needs, their wants, and their expectations are so that you can get the listing. And all you have to do is ask the questions and do it in such a manner that you get them to give you all the answers. All right, next then is number 4. Number 4, I'm going to call it here plan of action. Now, back here though, it was the what do I do to get a home sold? How do I separate myself? So think of it that way, of what we're doing here in this plan of action. So I'll write it up here this way, is separate yourself. Remember, that's one of the things that has to happen. Well, during this plan of action is where I'm now going to separate myself from the competition. Now, in terms of that separating myself from the competition, what I'm going to do then is, and here's the challenge with training you on this right now, is I don't know what they're going to tell you up here. Meaning, like, I have an idea, and I'll give you some of the ideas. But you just, like the story that I just told you about the guy buying a box of booties, prior to that happening, because this happened way before COVID. Prior to that happening, if you would have said to, if I would have been in a class and I said to you guys, hey, let me prepare you for the next listing you're going to go on. You're going to ask some questions, and then you're going to, down here in the plan of action, you're going to tell them that you're going to go to the medical supply store and buy them a box of booties, and you're going to get the listing. Like, I would have never imagined that, to be able to train it in a class, to be like, okay, here's how you're going to do it. So what I mean by that is, I'm not going to be able to tell you it right now of here is 100% what you're going to talk about every time in this plan of action section. But I can tell you this. What you want to do is take the information or the questions that you asked up here. You're going to take those and bring them down here and use that as your plan of action. So similar to what I said to you is, if you ask the questions and they tell you, I'm worried about the carpet, and then the way you're going to tell them your plan of action is, I'm going to go buy a box of booties and have them by the front door, so that anybody that comes to your home is going to put on those booties before they walk through, and you don't have to worry about them destroying your carpet. See, you wouldn't think that that's what you're going to talk about in a listing presentation. Go ahead, Carla.
I have an example. Let's say the question up there is, what did you not like about the previous agent? Well, he never contacted me or didn't keep in touch with me. And then it sounds like in plan of action, you can say, I promise you, I will call you every day at 5 o'clock, or at least twice a week on Wednesday and Friday to give you an update. You know,
perfect.
You took their concern. Now you made a plan. You promised back to them what you would do to take care of that.
Perfect. That's exactly right, Carla. Yeah. So I wrote down communication as she brought that up, because that is one that I will tell you comes up most of the time, especially based on what Carla was just saying. Is it is not going to be uncommon when you ask somebody to tell you about their previous experience that you hear that, hey, the agent didn't communicate like I thought that they should have, or something along those lines. So one of the areas is communication. So let's deal with that one. Thanks for bringing it up, Carla. So what I'm going to do then with this is, for me, let's say that they brought up communication up here in this question section. Let's use what Carla said. Now, Carla said, I'm going to call you, I think you said every day or twice a week or whatever. You decide what it is that you're willing to do, but make sure whatever you're going to tell them under this plan of action, you better be willing to do it. Sorry, I'm going to mute you, Carla. I thought you were talking to us. Okay. So under this communication section, here's how I would do it. So let's say that they did say, yeah, I had a bad experience with an agent that didn't stay in touch with me like I feel like that they should have. They didn't update us. We never knew what was going on, blah, 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 blah. Well, now I get to plan of action. What I'm going to do is present it this way. Here's how I'm going to say it, is I tell it to them of most agents blank, and then I'm going to say I blank. So I'm going to say, now remember, part of what I'm trying to do is separate myself. So I want to say it to them as, hey, unfortunately, the experience you had with that agent not calling you back, that is normal for most agents. I wish that it weren't the case, but it is. But that's not how I work. Here's how I work. So I'm going to say, I always want to say it as kind of a, most agents do this, but I do this. So that way we're contrasting it to, hey, yeah, unfortunately, that's not an uncommon thing that an agent doesn't communicate with their clients, but here's how I work. And then similar to what Carla brought up, I'm going to just say to them, let me tell you how I work. I am going to contact you every Friday between 10 and noon, or whatever time you're going to do it. You decide on when you're going to do it. But let's say that I said it that way. Now watch what happens with this. I'm going to do it this way. So I'll go back to my example with David. So I've asked him all these questions. We'll assume he said he had a problem with the agents communicating. I say, okay, well, David, unfortunately, that's not uncommon for most agents. Most agents are not trained very well in this business. And because of that, they don't understand the importance of customer service. And so that's the type of response that a lot of times you're going to get from an agent, but not me. Let me tell you how I work, because the way that I'm going to do it is a little bit different than that. What I'm going to do is I am actually going to call you every Friday between 11 and 12. Now, David, what phone number would you like me to call you on this Friday between 11 and 12? Now, what's going to happen if I say that to him? What do you think is going to happen when I say it? And when I say, what number would you like me to call you on Friday between 11 and 12?
That you're serious.
Yeah, and guess he's probably going to say, well, here's the phone number I would want you to call me on. Now, if I do that, if I say to him, what phone number would you like me to call you on this Friday between 11 and 12? Let me point out what I'm kind of doing here. Remember that I said that part of the job you've got to do, I said down here is the close. And if we go back here on getting them to choose me, is we have to close. Well, what I just did is a trial close on him. So I just actually did a trial close to see how David would respond by me saying, so David, what number would you like me to call you on Friday between 11 and 12? Well, let's say that he says to me, well, I would want you to call me at 801, 8675309. And I go, okay, great. That's the number I'll call you on Friday. Now, notice though, if I do that, I've just done a little bit of a trial close, and he's actually even now just somewhat agreed that I'm going to be calling him on Friday, which is when I always call all my clients. So as part of this plan of action, not only did I, yeah, you liked the phone reference there, Aaron? Cool. So, yeah, so notice not only did I answer his question of, hey, that's not how I work, but I actually did a little bit of a trial close in with it as well. Now, let me throw in one other piece on this as well, as we're talking about the plan of action on this. Is the idea of this, again, is just for me to be making sure that I'm covering everything that he talked about up above that was important to him, and making sure that I covered it in such a way that he can see that I'm going to not be the same as other agents. Now, let me throw in this one other piece. In the event, though, that he was so worried about that communication, what I may do as part of even this plan of action is I might even, if he had a really bad experience, so make sure you hear what I'm saying. I would not do this every single time, but if he told me that he had such a horrible experience with his previous agent because their communication was so bad and he was nervous about that happening again, I might even say, as part of this plan of action, I will put it in the contract that if I fail to call you and either talk to you or leave a message every Friday, that you can have the listing back. If I fail to call one Friday and talk to you, or at least at a minimum leave a voicemail for you, you could get out of the listing as a result of it. I'll give you that as the out. See, now typically most listings you're not going to need to do that on. But if you were out competing on a for sale by owner, or let's say we had talked about last week about going on expired listings, well, you go out on an expired listing, they are typically frustrated because they had a really bad experience, and I would almost guarantee you the agent quit calling them. The MO of what takes place with agents and clients. And now you're not seeing this too much in today's market because of how quickly homes are selling. But as the market changes at some point, and it will, and things slow down a little bit, and the properties stay on the market longer, and more properties come on as expired listings. When you go out to list an expired listing, they're going to be frustrated with their agent because their agent quit calling them. Typically what happens is this: they'll get the listing, they'll call, and after a month or two and the home's not sold, the home isn't sold, the agent will just quit calling because they feel bad, they feel dumb, and they don't know why. And I'm telling you, I promise you, you're going to see this as the market changes. People will come, agents will come to you and go, help me figure out why this property's not selling. I don't get it. Like it looks nice, everything's good. I just don't get why it's not selling. Well, it's not selling because it's overpriced. And we as agents, because of the market we're in right now, is going to create some really bad, lazy agents who are not going to know why, and so they'll just quit calling their clients. It is going to create some good opportunities for us that are going to be well trained down the road. Now, I don't know how quickly we'll see that. Hopefully, probably not too fast, but in some ways, hopefully it is faster that we start seeing more inventory. So anyway, any questions on this plan of action section of how you're going to deal with it? I'm not sure that I explained it really well.
Well, is there something you left out? Seemed pretty well to me.
Okay. Well, let me give you one more then, just to make sure. Let me just use one other example here on this plan of action. Photos. Now, and I could give you multiples of examples on this. I'm going to just give you one more, and hopefully that'll be enough. Here's how I would do it. If they had talked about wanting to make sure that their home looked really nice. So up here in this question section, if they were worried about, I just want to make sure that the home gets presented properly, blah, blah, blah. Under this photos section, then what I would do is this. I would say, well, let me tell you how most agents work. Most agents are going to take their iPhone and go out and just take pictures of your house and then post them on there. And I will ask the people, have you at all ever gone on and done searches online to look at houses? And 100% the answer is going to be yes, they've done that, because they are probably looking for a house themselves. So I'm going to ask them, have you gone on and done that? They're going to say, yes, I have done that. And I'm going to say, have you noticed that there is a distinct difference in some of the photos? Some are blurry. Some are, you could tell the agent took it with an iPhone and it probably was an iPhone 5 or something that they took the picture with. Like, they're so bad. And they'll say, yeah, I've noticed that there are some that look really good and some that are not. Well, yeah, unfortunately, that's what most agents do, but not me. I actually go hire a professional photographer to come out and take pictures of your home because we want to present it in the very best light possible. See, that's the idea of this plan of action, is I'm going to just take the things that they talk about up here, bring it down here, and I'm going to talk about it from the standpoint of, here's how most agents handle it, but not me. I'm different. See, you're trying to communicate to them, I'm different than every other agent out there. And why am I? So here's where I'm going to test you. Now, here's the time for the test. Why am I doing all that? What am I trying to do?
You're trying to create value.
Close? Oh.
Separate yourself.
Say good, yeah. Aaron, that's right. Is what I'm trying to do is create value so that I can close. I'm not sure who said that. Yes, I do want to be able to close, but I've got to create the value first there. Okay. So let me just, sorry, go ahead.
You're also showing that you heard what they said. You're confirming that I heard you, which is rapport building too.
Yes, that's exactly right. Thank you, Carla. That's exactly right. That's what I'm doing during that. Is by us talking about it shows that I heard what was important to you up above, and I have a plan of how to meet those needs that you have. See, now, like I said, here's what I have found. Typically, what agents want to hear is, what am I going to say down in this plan of action about marketing? And they want like a plan of, oh, here's all the stuff that we do, and here's all the websites we put it on, and blah, 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 all the stuff that people really don't care about. And instead, what we want to do is make sure we've asked enough questions up here that allow us to bring those things down here and talk about them in terms of what is important to them, because then that's going to create the value. All right.
To personalize it.
That's right. 100%. Exactly right, Luciana. We want to personalize it to them. Good. Now, let me come back here and let me show you where we're at. So on this process, remember, we've got to get them to choose me. So hopefully what has happened now is that I've built rapport. They feel safe. They trust me. I've had a chance to create value. I've separated myself, and I've even actually done some trial closes. Like I said, back here during this plan of action, the other thing that I'll do, actually, that I left out, on the photos piece, I left out one key piece. I apologize. Is I will say, here's what most agents do, is they're going to come and do it with their phone, but not me. I'm going to hire a professional to come out and take pictures of your house. Now, David, when would you like me to have the photographer come out and take the pictures? See, by me asking it that way, when would you like me to have them come out and take the pictures? What's going to happen now is all of a sudden he's like going to go, well, I don't know, probably Tuesday or Wednesday, or he's going to turn to his wife and say, well, I mean, were you wanting to do some deep cleaning before they came and did the photos, or I mean, whatever. But notice I'm doing another trial close of remember, your job is leadership. I'm leading them to this. I'm going to be listing your house, and to get them to choose me to be their agent throughout this process. So part of this plan of action is to answer their questions. But if I pull back up this, it's also, remember, we've got to be slowly closing to get the job done for them. All right. Now that we've done that, the next thing, so I'm not sure if I've got room here. Let's see. Yeah, I don't. I guess I'll kind of. I'm going to draw a line across again. Remember I did on the page before, I drew this line here? Like, I always think of it as these are kind of separating this listing presentation into bits and pieces. So I'm doing that again here on this one, okay? So I'll just draw the line across the top here. Now, what did I tell you had to happen before we would talk about price? Oh,
They have to
my
choose
line that
you.
I drew didn't show up. Sorry, go ahead.
They have to choose you.
Yeah, they've got to choose me. So now here's the thing. So I'm going to write it here as check in. Okay, so I'm now going to check in with them to see if they've chosen me. Okay, so David, can you unmute and will you interact with me on this one? Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so watch. So guys, pay attention to this. This is how I'm going to do it. So we're going to assume now that with David, I've gone through, I did step one, I've done the thank, acknowledge, promise, I did the needs, you know, let me give you the roadmap. We then came over here, I asked him all these questions, I've done the plan of action, I've told him all those things. I'm now going to check in with him. So here's how I do the check-in. So David, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we at in terms of you and I working together? 10 being 100% you're ready to sign the paperwork and list your home with me right now. 0 being you're about ready to throw me out of the house if I don't quit talking.
I'd say we're probably at a 9, Russ.
A 9. Okay, perfect. Well, so let me ask you this though, David. What would have to happen for us to get to where I'm at a 10?
Lower your commission.
Dog. Okay, so lower the commission. Well, we haven't even talked about that. So, but and if I remember right, David, you had asked me what it was, and I told you to be between 0 and 10. I will lower it from 10. How does that sound?
Perfect.
All right, no. So okay, so if I said that to you though, so what would have to happen for me to be to a 9? Because we haven't talked commission yet. So.
Can't think of anything.
Okay, so there's really nothing that I could do to get to a 10, it sounds like.
Right.
Okay, so if I'm at a 9, that's as high as I'm going to get. Great. Well, let's do this then. Let's talk about the market and what's going on and how that's going to affect the price of your home then. So, okay, so let's pause for a minute. What if he said, or actually somebody else, what would be your thoughts of what would be something else that somebody would say? Meaning, let's say that he said it was a 7 or an 8 or a 6 or whatever, it doesn't matter. Anything they say less than a 10, I'm going to say what has to happen to get there. So give me some other examples, somebody else on that, of things that they may say that would be holding them back from making me a 10.
So if you were, if you were cheaper than other agents, you could maybe be a 10 to me.
But we haven't even talked about commission yet. So how do you know that I'm not?
I guess that's a good point. Just because you've got so much value, I figured you'd be expensive.
Okay, good. I like where you're thinking. Go ahead, Carla.
Well, I'm just thinking I don't have all the pieces of the pie yet to make that decision. I mean, don't know what you're going to charge me.
Okay, so good. Okay, so let's do that one. Role play that one with me, Carla. So on a scale of 1 to 10, where am I at?
Oh, I think I'm at probably a solid 8 or 9.
8 or a 9. What would have to happen for me to be at a 10?
Well, I think we'd have to talk your commission.
Okay, perfect. So let me just ask you this, Carla. If we can come to an agreement on commission, are you good with listing your home with me?
Oh, absolutely.
Perfect. Let's do it then. Now, hopefully you guys are seeing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do that check-in of, on a scale of 1 to 10, where am I at in terms of us working together? Am I at a 1 or a 10? And if I'm if anything less than 10, I'm going to say, what would have to happen for me to get to a 10? Now, if there is something that I haven't covered, so the reason I do it that way is because if back here, there was something that they talked about up here that I didn't cover down here, it allows me now to talk about it and answer that question that they may have for me still. But in the event that it comes down to what Carlos said, which is just, well, we haven't even talked about what price you think my home ought to be or what your commission's going to be. And so I can't say for sure until we do the commission. Great. Is it safe to assume if we can come to an agreement on that, we're going to be working together? Yes. Great. Then let's talk price. So that's the next thing. So number 5 here is going to be then, I'm going to write here as market. And there's 3 pieces to this, okay? So the first one is going to be the macro, meaning what's going on with the real estate market. So somebody answer for me, and let's get somebody who, I know the hard part is it's harder for me to call on you guys when we're on Zoom than we're in class. See, usually in class, I'll just call on somebody who's not paid attention, or not, sorry, I said that wrong, not paid attention, that hasn't participated. So someone that has not participated, unmute. Uh-oh, somebody's playing a game in the background I could hear. All right. Let's see. Somebody who has an unmute and tell me, if somebody asked you what's going on in the market today, how would you respond? Somebody who hasn't unmuted yet.
Unprecedented interest rates.
No, you've participated, Carla. Come on.
Fudge.
I'm teasing you. You're fine, but I just don't. Everybody's counting on you to bail them out. I want them to have to participate. Bria, I see you. I've seen you unmute a couple times and not say anything. So, no, I can't get you.
Russ, I'll talk.
All right, good job. Thanks, Madison.
I would say that we're in a seller's market right now.
Okay, tell me more. What does that mean?
I would say we're in a seller's market. What that means is that there is a limited supply of homes and a lot of people out there looking for them, which is great for you from the selling side. It's very active. Things are moving fast, and that's why it's important that you need a real estate professional to walk you through all the best steps on how to sell your home and get the most out of it.
Good. Love it. I can see you're unmuted, Philip. You got something you want to add too?
I was just going to go over how the interest rates are low, which means you can get a better return on your house, which will make it easier for you to get into a home that you are actually dreaming of.
Awesome. Good. Yeah, love it. Okay, good. So when I say the macro part, so if I was on this listing presentation, the first thing I'm going to do is just tell them exactly what you guys just said. Hey, let me tell you what's going on in the market today. It's a seller's market. What that means is there's a low inventory. Homes are selling really quickly. And as a result of that, not as a result, because interest rates are so low right now, there are so many people trying to buy homes right now while the interest rate stays low. But the problem is there's no inventory. So what it means is that if we do this right and we get your home on the market priced correctly, we're probably going to end up with multiple offers that bid us up over the list price. So ultimately, that's what we're going to do with the macro picture, is we want to just tell them big picture what's going on in the real estate market. Number 2 then, under this, after we've talked about that, we next want to talk to them about pricing. Now, when I say we want to talk to them about pricing, what I'm going to do is this, is ultimately, I'm going to put in parentheses here for you guys, future pace. I want to be future pacing them. And what I mean by that is this. Now, again, in our current market, it is not as crucial that you're doing this future pacing on the pricing piece. But I will tell you, it still does apply. And what I mean by that is there was a house that was listed by another company, it wasn't an Everest agent, that listed a home in my neighborhood, and it is so far overpriced, they finally just pulled it off the market because it wasn't selling. My in-laws had a home listed by that same company, actually, ironically, that was sitting for sale next to them. This was a few months ago, and it just sat there and sat there and sat there. Well, I asked my father-in-law the one day something about it, and he said, yeah, they're thinking they might just pull it off the market and wait for the market to improve and get better. And I was like, what? Like, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I have never seen it this low of inventory, this crazy. So, like, to me, I was like, they're going to wait for it to get better. That's probably never going to happen. So just kind of recognize that even though I'm saying that this pricing piece probably isn't as crucial today, it's still crucial because people will still want to overprice their house. All right. So here's how you're going to do this. So now I've said, here's what's going on in the market. But based on that, what I want them to understand is that we are going to keep track of what happens on your home on a weekly basis. And specifically, what we're going to look for is the number of showings that we're getting and the number of offers we're getting. And what I'm going to tell them is, if we want to look at this, usually I train it as every 3 weeks. In today's market, though, to some extent, you almost want to keep an eye on this almost on a weekly or at every other week at the most right now, really. But the way, as a general rule, it's 3 weeks. So I want you guys to understand that, because as a general rule, over my 25 years, this is a 3-week thing you want to look at. But in our current market, with how low inventory is, you want to be keeping an eye on pricing faster than what we're talking about. Okay. So every 3 weeks, and again, maybe weekly or every other week right now, I want to look at how many showings. And if we've had 0 showings and 0 offers, what that means in terms of their price is that it is overpriced, basically. I don't tell them that, but I tell them you need to reduce your price somewhere between 7 and 10%. If you've had no showings and no offers, and it's been 3 weeks as a general rule, but again, like I said, if in our current market, if it's probably, you get 2 weeks with 0 showings, 0 offers, they're probably 7 to 10% overpriced and need to be, or they're at least 7% overpriced. They need to reduce the price by 7 to 10%. If after that couple of weeks or 3 weeks, they're getting some showings, and I would define some as 1 to 3 per week, but no offers, they need to reduce the price between 5 and 7%. And that's what you want them to be understanding, is that we're going to keep an eye on it. And so part of my weekly phone call to you each week is we're going to be discussing the number of showings and number of offers we've gotten. And if we're getting 0 showings, 0 offers, we probably need to reduce the price by at least 7%. If we're getting some, but no offers, and some is 1 to 3, we need to reduce the price between 5 and 7. You want to have this conversation with them up front so that you're preparing them, so that when you call weekly and say, we got no showings today or this week, and we've had no offers this week, they are knowing that you're going to be in a week or so asking them to reduce the price by a certain amount. All right, now once we've had the discussion about pricing, then number 3 is we're going to talk about the CMA and the price for their house. So the last thing on this pricing section is going to be, okay, here's what's going on in the big market. Here's how that's going to affect the pricing of your home. Now let's look at what we should price your home at. And then I'm going to run through, and on those CMA, I'm going to typically show, I like to have typically at least 3, but 3 or 4 solds, 3 or so, or depending on how many there are that are under contract, and however many actives, but I'm just going to say 3, but in today's market, you're lucky if you can find 1. So, but on the CMA, I typically like to get 3 solds, 3 under contracts, and 3 actives. Now, like I said, today's market, you might be lucky to get 1 or 2. Other markets, you might have 10, but I'm still only going to probably bring the 3 that are the most similar. Same with under contracts and solds. The idea being then is showing them, here's where the sold properties are, here's where the prices of the under contracts, and here's where the actives. Some agents like to also bring 3 expireds, and you could do that if you want. I just usually never did, but it's not a bad idea to have them to be able to show the people who priced where you're wanting to price ended up expiring, and here's what happened. Now, like I said, you're not going to find as many in today's market, but that's what you want to do on the market or the CMA piece is I'm going to show them here's some solds, here's how they were similar to yours, here's why they were different than yours, and same with the under contracts and actives. Now, based on that, and then you want to ask them, based on that, where do you feel we should price your home? And I want to try to get them to commit to a price. They're typically going to say, well, I don't know, what do you think? And here's the thing, they have a number in mind. And so you want to get them to give you what their number they're thinking of is, because ultimately they're wanting you to give the price before they give theirs. And I have just found by saying to them, hey, where do you think we should price it? And they'll say, well, I don't know, what do you think? And I just usually say, well, I'll give you my opinion, but I just first want, based on the information I presented to you, what price do you think we should put your home at that would cause it to sell? And then I just see what they say. Usually they will give me a price at that point, or they'll say, well, we were hoping for X amount of dollars. Well, that's great. At the end of the day, what I want to make sure you guys understand is I will list it at whatever price they want, provided they will follow this pricing strategy. I don't care what price they list it at. If they'll follow this pricing strategy and every 2 to 3 weeks reduce the price based upon no showings and no offers, or some showings and some offers, you'll get the property sold. And it will get it done in a manner that has them not frustrated with you. So that's the crucial thing. When they're wanting to price it higher than what the comps show, the main thing you've got to say is, I will do that as long as we can have an agreement that every 2 to 3 weeks we're going to adjust the price. And some people will say it as we're going to improve the price, because that sounds better. We're going to improve the price based upon this criteria right here. All right. Any questions on that pricing section? All right, I'm going to take that as a no. All right, number 6 then. The last thing on here that we're going to talk about is then to close. Is you then have to close. Now, here's the good news. If you have done this the way that we've been talking about so far, this process of along the way of saying, hey, so David, what number did you want me to call you on Friday? And when would you like me to have the photographer come out and take the pictures? And then I asked him, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we at in terms of us working together? Well, we're at 8. Okay, well, what would have to happen for us to get to a 10? Well, I would have to agree with your price or your commission or whatever. And they've done that. Now we've gone through pricing. After we've done all the pricing and stuff, I'm going to just say, okay, so based on everything we've talked about, David, if we list the home at $550,000, are you wanting to get that started on today, or should we have it hit the market on Saturday? Which is going to be better for you? And then he's going to say whatever he says. So ultimately, we aren't using any tricky closes or anything. If we've done it right all along the way, we've been checking in with them. It really is just a matter of saying, okay, so it sounds like you wanted to list the home at this price. So if we put it on the market at that price, did you want it to hit the market tomorrow, or should we wait until the photographs are done? And we talked about having those done on Thursday. Should we have the market hit on the market on the weekend? Which would you prefer? And then they're either going to say, well, I would want it to hit on Saturday or whatever. And that's where we can then go from there in getting the contract signed. So once we have that, then it's just a matter of saying, hey, all we need to do now then is sign all the paperwork and I can get started. All right. What questions?
Can you just repeat that very, very last statement you said?
Yeah. I don't know if I remember, but I think probably it was the, hey, based on the price you've decided and what we have come up with, did you want to have the home go on the market tomorrow, or would you rather have it hit on the weekend? Is that the one? I don't know for sure if that's what it was, Carla, but. All right, then I'm not hearing anything from anyone else. So that hopefully that all worked okay. My iPad's about to die, so that's probably the way of saying we need to be done. But anyway, so all right. Well, thank you for being here. What we will do is on Thursday, I'm not going to be in the office again. I'll be coming to you live from my basement again on Thursday. Thursday is the activities management class. So anyway, so yeah, unfortunately no in-person classes this week, and we'll kind of go from there. So anyway, Bria's saying she didn't think her mic worked. I don't know. Unmute and try it right now and let's see.
Hey Russ, do you still have
Yeah,
the
go
notes
ahead.
for the lesson 5, or did you erase that?
Let me see if I can pull it back up here.
Thank you.
Oh, you know what? It didn't save them.
Oh, okay.
Russ, I took screenshots.
Can you please
okay.
send that to me?
You
Or
betcha.
put it in the group chat?
Sure.
Yeah, the
Thank
other
you so
thing
much.
that will happen as well, the other thing is that I will upload this to YouTube. So you can always go to YouTube and search Peak Agent Training, and you can find the
Okay.
channel, and then search for today's date, and it'll be on there as well. So.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you so
that's
much
the
for the
bad news.
class,
Apparently,
Russ.
once I close the whiteboard, it messes it up. So.
Okay, thank you for the class and your time.
Okay, thank you guys. Hey, have a great day, and I'll see you guys on Thursday if you're here for the
Thank
activities
you.
management class. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Bye-bye.
See ya.